So we have Jeff Roberts. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, good. Jeff, how are things?
Things are good.
You look very professional, sitting there in your office with the flags around you.
Well, I was nervous that being you, this could be a very professional type operation.
Yeah, well,
I see you've dropped it down a notch, though.
Obviously, it's not as professional as you thought. You got dressed up, and I did not, so that's okay. The way this usually works is that in just a minute or so we'll kind of start, and then during the week preceding this, we got a number of questions from different people, and the questions were excellent. I know a lot of people obviously are interested. The election is on Thursday. Early voting ends today, and we'll get all into that in just a second. Just tell me, what are you doing today as we go into the last day of early voting?
Well, I started my day off at the Hermitage Library,
Okay.
just to make sure things were smooth there. We did have a line of voters when we opened it at 8 o'clock. So I think today will be a big day.
Okay. All right. Well, let me see. So it's 10:03, so we can actually start. And if you lose me for a minute, it just meant that something happened, and I'll get right back on. So you can just keep talking.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We have the Davidson County Administrator of Elections, Jeff Roberts, with us today. Again, thank you for being with us, Jeff. I know you got a lot of stuff to do. Thank you for giving us an hour. Again, just for people who may have just joined in, early voting ends today at 4:30.
Correct.
And how many sites are open today, in case somebody's listening and wants to go vote?
All 11 sites are open.
Okay, and they're all open until 4:30.
That's correct.
All right, and again, just to make sure people, what do they need to bring in order to vote?
That all they need is a photo ID, Tennessee photo ID or federal issued photo ID.
Okay, same thing on Thursday?
Same thing on Thursday, right.
Okay, all right. Okay, so before we get into all the details of the elections, why don't you, how did you end up in this wonderful role of being the Administrator of Elections for Davidson County? Tell us just a little bit about yourself in case people don't know who you are.
Sure. Well, I grew up here in Nashville, went to Hillwood High School, Brookmead Elementary. I've got 3 daughters. They all went to Hillwood High School. They're grown now. Worked for the state, worked with you at the state for 30 plus years, retired from the state, and decided I didn't want to stay home. So I did a couple years in metro purchasing. I went out to the private sector for a couple, and then this job came open, and I thought, well, that should be an easy job. You don't have that many elections. I've learned a lot since I decided to join elections. It's like a never-ending story.
Well, particularly there was a period of time there in Davidson County where we were having elections like every 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw more voting booths than I did my wife there for a while.
Well, so it seems like we've kind of gotten out of that. Now it's just changed in terms of the issues that you have to deal with.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit, well, let's just get into it. Absentee ballots. Obviously, hotbed of issues and activities. I know that there was arguments going on in this Tennessee Supreme Court over the week. Tell people a little bit about the process regarding absentee ballots. What is the law? What happens? And maybe you can start with giving us kind of the numbers. I know that there's been a lot of requests for absentee ballots in Davidson County, and a lot have returned. What's the process?
Right. Well, back in the spring after the March election, when COVID was getting kicked off, we had a feeling that Davidson County residents would be interested in absentee ballots. So when we sent out your sample mailer, we, for the first time, mentioned absentee ballots there, and we included in your packet a request form. So that really got things kicked off. And in Davidson County, we received 33,460 requests for absentee ballots. To give you some perspective, the same election in 2016, we received 1,736 requests. So the numbers have been very large. And it's really pushed us to figure out, how do we process all of those? I'm very proud to say that Thursday, the 30th, was the cutoff at 11:59 p.m. Our folks stayed late. We processed every request that we received and put it in the mail on Friday. So we've done everything we could to get your ballots to you. We need the public. If you waited to the last minute, turn that ballot around, get it back in the mail. Even better, take it to your local post office or take it down to the Broadway post office. That's where our post office box is located. So if you're concerned about that, you know, if I put it in my mailbox out at the street, it might not make it. Shortcut that a little bit. Either go to the local post office or go to Broadway. We have to receive it election day.
That was my next question. So even if it's postmarked, you know, a day before the election day, if it doesn't get into your hands by election day, it doesn't count. Is that it?
That's correct. That's correct. And, you know, as far as the ballots that might get rejected, the ones that come in late, that's probably will be the largest percentage. Or if you don't sign the affidavit that's on that yellow envelope, that could present a problem for you also.
Okay, so you sent out 33,460 absentee ballots.
Right.
How many at this point have you gotten back in?
As of last night, we had 21,498. And we just picked up the mail this morning. It looked like 3 or 4 trays of mail. So that's probably another 900 or so.
Okay. And so you've got roughly, I don't know, 12,000 still floating around out there. Obviously, some of them went out. You were processing them getting them out last night.
Right.
And so you'll know basically how many at the end of this whole process you sent out and didn't get back in.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And, you know, traditionally, people will ask for an absentee ballot, change their mind, decide they don't want to vote once they see who's on the ballot. But we think people could switch back and forth this time just because it's so new. I've changed my mind. I want to vote in person. That's okay. Just know that we have to vote you the provisional process so that we can make sure you don't vote twice.
And what does that mean in terms of if I request an absentee ballot and then I change my mind and want to go vote, what happens?
We will vote you. You'll have to fill out a little more paperwork, and we take your ballot, and instead of you putting it in the scanner, we're going to put it in the provisional bag. And then the day after the election, we go through all of those provisional bags, and those ballots, we look to see, did we receive your absentee ballot or not? If we did, we'll count the absentee ballot and not count the provisional. If we didn't receive your absentee ballot, we'll count the provisional ballot. So it's kind of a fallback fail-safe for the voter if they're concerned that, you know, it's not going to make it. And you can go out on the voter lookup on the state site, and that's being updated on a regular basis. We send our information to the state so you can see if we've received your ballot or not.
All right. So tell people who are listening, in terms of the absentee ballot process, has to be in your post office box,
right,
by election day.
Right.
Okay. It has to actually have been received.
That's correct.
when do those get counted? Do they get counted that evening? When do they actually get processed?
You know, we've already received 21,000, so we will start counting them at 7 a.m. as soon as the polls open. We have a group of poll officials. They work in teams, 2 Republican, 2 Democrat. They will be counting them throughout election day to get those processed. Now, the ones we pick up from the post office late Thursday evening, those will be counted later in, you know, as soon as they get back. But we'll have to check them in and go through the regular process. All of the ones that we've received, you know, a month ago, our goal is to get as many of those counted election day as possible.
Okay, so I guess, and again, I'm just asking you questions as they pop into my head.
Sure.
So there's a number of, there's always a number of races going on. There may be some close ones this time. So you could have possibly as many as 10,000 ballots that show up somehow on election day. You've got the other ones already in, but you've got 10,000 out there. And let's say just everybody, you know, waits, and then they send them in 2 days before. They all show up in that PO box on election day.
Right.
So you could have as many as 10,000, which could change the nature of the elections. How does all that work?
Well, you know, I think the public's going to have to be a little more patient this time as far as when they see results. You know, before, when we only received, let's say for this election, 1,500 absentee ballots back, it's not likely the absentee ballots could change the outcome of a race. So, you know, and we could easily count them during the day. So they were reported along with the early voting numbers. This time, we will not be likely reporting absentee ballot numbers along with the early voting numbers, just because we will not have processed them all. The TV stations, a lot of them, they have people located at every precinct. We're required by law to post on the window or the door the results on the in-person voting at election day. So the press could be reporting those numbers, and they all change based on what happens on absentee.
Okay.
So it's going to be a whole different dynamic on Thursday than what we're used to.
Okay, so let me ask you a question that sort of has come in, but I guess it's, well, first, okay, I'm going to switch the way I ask it. So does the media understand that because of the unique situation regarding the pandemic and the tremendous number of more absentee ballots that you've received, that the numbers they're getting still, you know, you still have a lot of ballots out there. You'll probably, well, I don't know if you'll know exactly how many ballots you get in on election day or not, that still need to be counted. So you know, they're sitting there showing polling precincts with numbers, but there's still ballots to be counted. Do they understand that? Has that been relayed to them?
You know, we've tried to get that message out. You know, a lot of times they'll show the percentage of precincts in. Maybe they will tweak that and show a percentage of registered voters or something like that. So you get some perspective as to, are these super small numbers, or are they representative of a larger base? I mean, we will be reporting the early voting numbers. You know, we always report those as soon as the polls close and no one else is in line. Those will come out. That will give some perspective, because that's a county-wide, everybody can choose to do that. But it's still going to be a lot different than what we've experienced in previous elections. I mean, the absentee numbers are just way too large for anyone to say this is it when the initial numbers come out.
All right. So, you know, as we're all sitting there watching the numbers and waiting for the election results to come in, people need to understand that some of the races may not be decided until Friday or Saturday. It depends on how many ballots you're having to count to verify.
That's correct. I mean,
Okay.
we are going to make every effort to try to have the numbers on Thursday. We're in uncharted waters. We've never done this before. So we are really trying to think about how we're going to even pull this off and get numbers out on Thursday.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to switch for a second to Thursday and what happens Thursday. But I did want to recognize Councilmember John Rutherford is on the call. Thanks, Councilmember Rutherford, for being on. We've got latest COVID numbers from Davidson County: 21,410 confirmed cases, 194 deaths. 21,410 confirmed cases. That was an increase of 350 from yesterday. So with everything else going on, including the pandemic, particularly the pandemic, how is information being relayed to the public? I know there's been, obviously, over 30,000 people requesting absentee ballots. So word got out that they could certainly request that. What about just the basics of Election Day itself? Tell us a little bit about, Election Day is Thursday, polls open at 7, they close at 7. Sort of what I would say a normal election day in the middle of a major national crisis, but same things. I mean, all the polling places are going to be open. Tell us a little bit more about what's going to happen that day.
Right. I mean, based on the issues that other states had, we did not want to create any confusion for the public. So we're trying to open all of our traditional polling places. All of our workers will be wearing PPE. We've instituted a touchless voting process just to try to limit the spread of any germs. Well, our goal is that voting will be safer than going to the grocery store. We're trying to put processes in place that you can feel confident that your voting precinct will be a safe place to show up. Now, just like at some of the big box stores and wherever, social distancing will be in place. That means we can't have as many people inside the precinct voting. So the lines appear longer, but in reality, they're probably no longer than they have been in the past. It's just that when you put 20 people and you spread them 6 feet apart, it makes the line look a lot longer.
Okay, so tell me, okay, so I get in line, I go to and I usually vote on election day. So I get there, are there going to be places, and do I just automatically remember I'm supposed to stand 6 feet apart? Are there going to be little things that indicate where I should be standing? Right. That type of thing.
Blue tape on the floor to give you an idea. There's signs that say, remember social distancing. We will have a greeter at the door. The greeter will hold up a card that you will read that has, you've probably seen them if you've gotten your hair cut, that the sample questions, have you had a fever? Have you been exposed? All of those kind of things, so that if you have to answer yes to one of those, we've got a special process to take care of you. If you answer no, you will come on in after hitting the hand sanitizer at the door and go through the process. The process includes, we won't touch your driver's license. You will be just sliding it back and forth so that we can see it. We will hand you a pen that only you will use. You'll recycle it after you finish, and we will hand you a coffee stir. You'll use that coffee stir to make your selections on the ballot marking device. Then you can recycle that on the way out. So the whole process has been set up so that it's really touchless as far as the voter goes.
Okay, so go into even more detail just so for people who may be voting on election day. So I go in, show my driver's license or photo ID. They ask me which primary I'm going to vote in.
Right.
Okay. And then they have to do some checking. Do I have to sign in like I normally do?
Well,
with a pen?
you know, in the past, you've had to sign more than one time.
Right.
This election, you're going to sign one time on the application that you will take over to the machine operator that will bring up your ballot. You will hand that application to the machine operator based on what's on there. He will bring up your ballot. At that point in time, it's your opportunity to say, yes, this is the ballot I wanted, or no, it's not. If it's not, we have a process in place that we call a do-over. So you just do over that process to make sure we get the right ballot for you. The key is, if it doesn't look right from the voter's perspective, say something. If you wait, go through the process and put your ballot in the scanner, we can't undo it at that point.
Okay, and somebody just asked a really good question. Mask? Are masks required to go vote?
Masks are encouraged to vote, and anyone that shows up without a mask, we have masks available at the door that we will offer you. Mask cannot be mandated to vote. That's a directive from the state that we can't force an individual. But should they choose not to wear a mask, we will take other precautionary steps as they move through the process to make sure the people after them come into a clean environment.
All right, so I know this is getting pretty tricky. We have a mandate from the mayor to wear masks. You're being told that if somebody does not want to wear a mask when they come into the polling place, they're not going to be shifted off. They're allowed to come in and vote.
That's correct. And
okay.
I will tell you at this point, that has been very rare in the 41,000 people that we've already voted.
Okay.
Very rare.
Okay. Election officials all wearing masks, all wearing protective. Are they wearing masks or protective gear, or what are they?
Well, they're wearing. We have provided mask, face shields, gloves, and gowns. The minimum is the mask.
Okay.
They can wear anything beyond that they feel comfortable wearing. I think we've had some instances where the air conditioners cut off and people come out of the gowns pretty quick. The face shields fog up, so it depends on the individual, but the mask is the minimum that our workers have to wear.
Okay, so go back to the election process. So I come in, it sounds like the only things that are going to be involved with me touching anything or exchanging is I sign one time, I get handed the sheet that says I'm voting in the primary. And
correct.
I take that and hand it to, the person, the official that is waiting to receive it. So they're probably wearing gloves. So I'm touching something and handing it to the election official.
Right. And the election official will not hand that back to you. They then deposit that somewhere else. Now, what we've been told by the health department is that while we do have gloves available for our workers, they give a false sense of security. They recommend plenty of hand sanitizer. So the voters will have an opportunity to hit the hand sanitizer on the way in and the way out. So multiple times.
All right. So, okay. So I go to I hand the thing, they get ready, they push in the cartridge or make sure I'm voting the right thing, check everything. And then I start voting. So typically then I process it, hit vote, I get the little piece of paper out. I take that and then I go over and then I put it on the screen myself, as I remember.
You put it in the scanner yourself. That's correct.
Right. So they don't have, nobody else has to touch it. Somebody's standing there making sure I do it right.
Right.
And then I get my I voted sticker and then I'm out of there.
You're out of there. That's correct.
Okay. So I know this question is going to come up. So I'm voting and I cough or sneeze. What happens? I know that nothing touches the voting machine accept a coffee or whatever,
Right.
coffee stirrer.
Right.
I don't drink coffee, so I don't know if I'm gonna know how to use that stir thing. But so I'm using the stir thing to hit it. Wiping off machines, making sure that, because I assume I'm also gonna, at the end, am I gonna use my coffee stirrer to hit the little vote thing at the bottom?
Well, there's not a vote thing. There's a button that says print card.
Okay.
So that will then spit out your paper ballot that you will review, and you will then take the paper ballot and put it into the scanner. The
Okay.
scanner is where the vote actually gets counted.
Okay. So are there people there that are going to be, I hate to say this, if somebody does cough or sneeze, are there going to be efforts to kind of keep everybody clean, everything clean, and
Right.
keep everybody safe?
Right. Now, they have, I don't know if there's some kind of antiseptic wipes that we will use to wipe off the surfaces should we have some type of problem there. We just have to be careful that we don't, those cloths can be kind of damp, and we don't want anything dripping inside the ballot marking device. So our folks have been instructed exactly how to do it, to wipe those off.
Isn't this amazing? How many, all this stuff,
yeah. It is. It's like a different election. We've never had an election like this before.
Right. All right. So go back to, okay, so I pull up and I'm wearing my mask and I think I'm fine, but then I show a temperature.
Right.
What is this special process? Are you going to take me in the back and talk to me, or
well,
how do I vote if
right.
If I'm, and I didn't know I was running a temperature, but it turns out that
right.
I do, hypothetically. What happens?
Well, we're not taking your temperature, but if we'll ask you if you've had a fever. What we have seen is that people will answer that they have been exposed. My neighbor, my wife, my coworker, whatever. We have a process where we will essentially, we'll vote you on paper outside, so you don't have to go inside.
Okay. So, and just so, because this is the next question. So, turns out that, I show up and you're not taking my temperature, but you asked me a question and it's like, well, yes, I have been exposed. And
right.
Again, hypothetically, because I have not in the last 2 weeks. So my answer is yes. So how do you keep the poll worker, the election official, safe from the individual who says, I did get exposed and, blah, blah, blah. I know this is so complicated, but how do you keep that person safe?
Well, what we've got, that greeter has what we are calling a COVID precaution kit.
Okay.
It's a quart size or gallon size Ziploc bag. It has a yellow piece of paper in there. It has a pen in there and an I voted sticker. They're going to have you, they're going to open up, you reach in their voter that may have been exposed. You will pull out the yellow piece of paper. It asks you for your address and it asks you for which ballot you want. You will also put your driver's license, drop it in there. We'll seal the bag up. We'll take it inside. We look you up because we can, clear plastic bag. We don't have to touch your driver's license. We will bring your ballot outside based on where you live. Are you in the right place? And you will vote outside. We have a special envelope that you will put that ballot in, and then we will drop that down inside the orange provisional bag. Voter votes and nobody touches anything.
Amazing. Okay.
Well, and we've had a few. We had 3 individuals show up yesterday at one place that had to do that. They said their roommate had tested positive. So everything worked smoothly. The voters even appreciated that they were able to vote, yet we were taking precautions.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to get into some of the questions. They're really good questions. I just had an individual say that they voted early at Green Hills and it all worked perfectly. And it worked exactly like you said. So
That lets me sleep good at night.
All right. All right. Well, you can sleep after in about 2 weeks.
Thursday, right?
Well, I know it sounds like after Friday. But I will ask you this because this keeps coming up. November. Okay.
Yeah.
So when can you request an absentee ballot for November? Obviously, you have to get through August and figure out who the winners are, because then you have to come up with another ballot. So when does that process start?
You can request one August the 5th.
Okay. Well,
Now,
but that's August the 5th. Okay, so the election's August the 6th.
correct.
Yeah.
So you can send in your request.
Okay.
We would not send you a ballot until we have the ballot prepared. So you have not only this race, but we've got the city of Belmead, Forest Hills, and Goodlettsville that have races going on in November. Their qualifying deadline is not until August 20th. The withdrawal deadline is August 27th. And then we have to have, the state has to approve the ballot. The commission has to vote on the ballot. We have to send the ballot to the printer. So we're thinking somewhere the second week in September before we would have ballots to send out. We may be holding your request, but we wouldn't start sending out ballots until the second week of September.
Okay, so people can go ahead and request on August the 5th, but it may be a while before they actually get the actual ballot.
And we would prefer they go ahead and request.
Okay. Do they,
The better.
let me ask you this. Let's say that I request on August the 5th,
Mhm.
do I get something back that tells me that, yeah, we've gotten your request, but we won't be sending it out for a while? Or how do I, in case I don't understand that the ballot's going to take a little while, how do I know?
We will, on the state's website, you can go on there and look, and it will tell you that we've received your request.
Okay.
We haven't figured out exactly how we're going to do it. What we've been doing this time is, if you send us an email with a request, we've been trying to reply back that we got it.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, right now, based on the volume that we could get, we just don't know exactly how we're going to try and keep the public up to speed. But we will probably send something out in the mail like we did this election that will have the sample ballot. It will have tips on how to vote during for the November election, those kind of things. And we're hoping that we know we've got 33,000 people that have experienced absentee. So we've got a much larger base than we've had in the past. And a lot of folks like yourself are helping get the word out. Here's how absentee ballot works.
Yeah. All right. Got it. All right. A couple more questions that have been coming in. Poll workers. Do you have enough for Thursday? You have enough election officials for Thursday? And is everything going to be, it sounds like everything is open. Any problems that you see?
Everything is open. I will tell you, when you're dealing with between 1,000 and 1,200 people, someone always gets sick. Someone has a car wreck. Someone has a relative that dies. All of those kind of things. And that poll worker can't be there. We try to have a bench of poll workers that we can dispatch out to replace someone. So that is the plan right now. We have over 1,000 poll workers committed to help us right now. So we're feeling pretty good. It's still 5 days before Thursday. So I will feel better Thursday night, but right now we're looking pretty good.
Are you going to sleep between now and Thursday night or not?
You know, I don't know, Jim. I may be sleeping here, but you know, hopefully I can catch a wink here or there.
All right. So our last election was on what day?
March the 3rd.
And what happened the night before, or the morning of March the 3rd?
Well, you know, I was lying in bed. I was already asleep, and my weather alarm went off and said that tornado producing thunderstorms were headed toward Davidson County. So I got up and started watching the news and started texting folks here, and we decided we would come in just in case. And we were here at 1 o'clock, and good thing we were, because things went south pretty quick. In fact, before we could get here, we had power off everywhere and precincts down. And, you know, it's great to have staff that you call on the phone at 2:30 in the morning and say, you need to come on in to work. And they jump in their clothes and come on, you know, not even thinking about what they look like, or, I mean, they just show up and go to work. I will tell you that we had people here in the office, we were calling convenience markets close to our polling places just to see if they had power, so we could try to figure out where we were going to be closing and where we could open up. It was one crazy morning.
Well, let's, this is going to be crazy enough as it is on Thursday. Let's hope that for everybody's sake.
No more tornadoes for a while.
No more tornadoes. Yeah. All right. So had a question about young people, particularly who may have been away at school or and are coming back in and may or are now maybe living at home with their parents, and may have moved back in. How do you figure out, I mean, who is, of those kids, I assume they have to be registered to vote here, but they may not necessarily have as long as they have a driver's license or a photo ID, they can vote. There's not a problem.
They can vote. That's not the issue. I think probably the big issue is they may have sent in a paper application. It came through the mail. To vote absentee, you either have to vote in person the first time, or we have to register you in person. So to get around the registering in person, we've allowed kids to come out here and we will re-register you in person. So if you're going away to school, you can get that set up before you leave and you can vote absentee. If you, let's say you've moved back in with your parents and you were living in another state, you know, the Department of Safety really requires you, after 30 days of being here, you're supposed to change and get a Tennessee driver's license. If you go to the driver's station and get a Tennessee driver's license, that's considered an in-person registration. So you're good to go from the get-go because you've registered in person. They've seen you face to face.
Okay. But you had to in order to vote in this election, you had to register by what day?
July the 7th.
Okay. All right. It just dawned on me, because I'm one of these individuals that was supposed to get a new driver's license this year. I got a letter from the governor saying I have until November to get it.
Right.
So my driver's license has expired, but my letter is good through November. So do I have to bring both? Or
no, you can use an expired driver's license as long as it's not your first time to vote.
Okay. All right. It's not a very good picture of me. Does that matter?
No, I mean, we've got, if you can think about it, elderly folks that, you know, they essentially don't drive anymore. So their driver's license has expired. So that's why this was put in to, you know, recognize that some people, you know, they don't drive anymore.
Okay. Let me, I usually ask a big question with about 20 minutes to go, and it's 10:40. And you may or may not want to get into this, but we have had a couple of people that have sent messages about this. And I know you can't get into partisan politics. That's not what this is about. But the idea of moving the election in November or delaying the election, can you, without, again, because you can't do that, is that just something that's not even on your radar screen? You can't even deal with that?
No, I mean, we don't decide here at the Election Commission when we have elections anyway. All of those are decided by state law, federal law. We're just along for the ride.
Okay. All right. So you just your job is to implement what you're
That's
told
right.
to do.
What we're told to do.
Okay. Couple other questions that came in. Election workers or election officials. There was a question about credit reports or something. Do people have to fill out something, and why is that required? Is that like a state requirement?
No, it's a requirement here. So if you're going to be one of our poll workers that has access to Social Security numbers, we will do a background check on you.
Okay. And why is that?
That's all it is.
Yeah. And why is that?
Well, I think the public would appreciate that if one of our workers is going to be able to see anybody's Social Security number, that we would want to check and make sure they don't have a conviction for, stealing identities, writing bad checks, all of those kind of things, that having access to this type of information would not be a good idea.
Okay. All right. Okay. Another question. Is there a way for someone to drill down into the results and find out who an individual voted for? I guess, I think the question, because we got so many absentee ballots and so much of that stuff going on, if somebody from the outside was trying to figure out who an individual is voting for, you've got safeguards in place to make sure that, like somebody from the outside can't come in and say that I know how Jeff Roberts voted in this particular election.
No. Information on which ballot you chose, that's the extent, because we have to keep that information to actually know which ballot to bring up for you. But as far as how you voted, the only way that could happen really is if only one person votes at a precinct. You would know how that one person voted.
Right.
But outside of that, no. There's no way.
Well, I guess you could say if two people voted,
here.
if two people voted and they all voted the same way.
Same way, you could, right? Yeah, yeah.
Right.
But we don't know here how anyone votes, because even the absentee ballots, part of the process is once we verified your signature on that affidavit, that piece of paper is detached from the envelope, and the envelope moves through the process then where it's opened up, the ballots are taken out, and you can't link it to a person.
Okay, I got it. Okay, that's helpful. Another question that came in, got an early voting site that has people going in and out the same door. The line is right outside the door, and as a result, there is no social distancing. I'm not sure which is the polling location or the early voting site. But obviously that may be the case in some different places where you come in and out the same door.
Right. A few locations that, if I had to guess, could be Belmead, City Hall. If you can think about it, none of our buildings were designed to really work with COVID. And we're having to the extent we can, modify, and the actual voters taking some responsibility on themselves. If they see someone coming, wait, let them come through the door, then you go in the door. It would be great if all the buildings were designed to accommodate social distancing, but they just aren't.
Yeah. So it was Belmead, or it is Belmead. That's where it is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Tell me a little bit about, because, typically, I'll drive around and kind of see what's going on, even early voting, just because I like to go by Howard School and see all the signs in the thing. As I have not been to Howard School, so for those of you who haven't, I mean, typically you drive by and you can't. The whole place is covered, including some of the trees sometimes, with signs, and then people are have tents and other stuff set up. Is that going on? Have you been over to Howard School? Have you seen what it looks like?
I have not been to Howard School, but I think there are fewer signs this time than in previous elections. I don't know if it's COVID related or what the races are, but there seemed to be less signage this time.
Okay, and there's no requirements. You don't have any requirement from the election commission about people who are out there holding signs and stuff, they just have to be 100 feet away from the
Right.
entrance.
They have to be 100 feet, and we have no jurisdiction or authority for anything that happens outside the 100 feet.
Okay. I didn't think so. I don't think anybody has any jurisdiction for that, because you
No,
never know what's going to
You never know what's going to happen. That's right.
Yeah. All right. So, all right. So I want to get back to, we got about 10 minutes left. So tell me, because this is really intriguing to me, particularly because you're going to have, obviously we have a statewide United States Senate race going on. We have congressional races going on. And then we have, some state races. So tell me how you see this kind of playing out on Friday, the day after the election. So you're going to get your numbers in on, the typical thing where you go and you can look on the window of the polling place and see the numbers, but you still may have several thousand votes out there that are waiting. This is going to happen, I assume. Well, I shouldn't assume. Other counties have races going on as well. So
right.
How does all this, tell me what, if you can even imagine what is going to happen on Thursday night and then particularly Friday in terms of trying to get that information in, because if some of these races are close, nobody's going to be able to call them, and so we're going to have to wait. I know that Kentucky had, I don't know if it's the same situation in Kentucky with their Democratic primary for the United States Senate. It took a little while to figure all this stuff out. So
right.
Have you all talked about it as of from the statewide standpoint and how it will impact Davidson County?
Davidson County probably has the largest percentage of absentee voters right now of any county. So we're probably going to be the pilot for, can we process all of these ballots Thursday night? It could be a late night, but we're going to do everything that we can, throw as many people and scanners and other resources as we can think about to make that happen on Thursday night. But again, it'll be later than normal.
Okay. So you're just going to keep going until all this stuff gets done. And then everybody just has to wait until everything is finalized, correct?
Right. But, well, like you said earlier, we have so many absentee ballots that if a race is tight, that can make a big difference.
Okay. Candidates, are they aware of this as well? I assume they are.
I assume they are. We have not heard that I've heard of any specific questions from candidates, but if any are listening and they have questions, they can feel free to give me a call.
All right, so I've got a couple of more difficult questions for you. So I got one that came in and said verification of signatures for an absentee ballot. I think the individual is indicating that a variation on the signature, they may not have put their middle name.
And we're not looking for the whole name. We're looking to verify that it is you. So how you make the first letter, how you end your first name, how much space do you traditionally put between your first name and your last name? It's not an exact match. People change. The surface that you're writing on is different. We will even go back. We have, for a lot of people, we have multiple signatures on file. So if we think it doesn't look like a match, we're going to go back and see in our other signatures, do we have something that it looks like you?
Okay. All right. So this person doesn't have to worry at this point.
I wouldn't worry. And think about it this way. You are sending a request into us with your signature on it. If we have a problem with your signature there, we're going to contact you and say, hey, something doesn't look right. By the time you send in your ballot, you've already gone through this process. So we're looking, and you know what kind of signature we're looking for. All
right. So with everything else going on, from the standpoint of, and we had Trey Hargett, the Secretary of State, on this show a while back, and lots of questions to him as well. And lots of questions about the General Assembly and different things going on. From the standpoint of, obviously we're learning as we go through this process, trying to make sure that sounds like everything is done carefully and correctly. Had a question that just came in about the governor's involvement, and any been any indication. I mean, because I'm guessing by law you can't start counting those absentee ballots until a set time, until I think 7 a.m. on election day. Is that right?
Correct. Correct.
Any indication about, I mean, because you've got so many coming in, was there any request, or has there any been discussion from the governor's office to provide some type of emergency relief so you can go ahead and start counting them at some point earlier than that?
Not at this point. And I think really people don't know for sure how long it's going to take. So this is kind of a trial run for November. Let's see what it takes. How many is it reasonable to count in a night, so that we can create the expectation for the public. You know, if we get 10 times as many as we have for this election, it will take about this long to count. So right now we're in uncharted waters, and we're just trying to feel our way through to see what can we do.
Okay, one more question on that process. So when you're counting, you said you had 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans.
Right.
They all have to be watching each ballot be counted. Is that right? So they just have to keep an eye on it to make sure everything.
They're kind of watching each other, and each that's a team. We'll have multiple teams. They will be given a stack of ballots to start with. They only work with 25 ballots at a time. Once they finish those, they get another 25. You know, it's a very prescribed process. You wouldn't want to come watch it. You would be bored out of your mind.
All right. So if they get 25 at a time, and we could have as many as 33,460 absentee ballots that have to be counted.
Yes.
They're going to be drinking a lot of coffee, and
Correct.
They may be doing this for a long, long time. So one of the questions, you have different teams, or they're going to be
multiple teams of 4.
Multiple teams.
Right.
Okay. So so you have different groups counting at the same time. So it's not like one group waiting.
We will scale that up depending on how quickly it looks like it's going.
Okay.
So we will start adding more resources as we need to.
All right. So Jeff, one more time, tell me, 33,460 absentee ballots got requested last election. How many got requested?
For the August 2016, we had 1,736.
1,736.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I think that's really important to know. Okay. So here's my, we've got about 5 minutes left. Here's my last horrible question.
All right.
And it sounds like you've thought through everything, which is amazing. I know you still got this question about people asking absentee ballots on August the 5th, and it may take a little while. And I think it is our responsibility, everybody's responsibility, to try to get the right information out. That's why it's so helpful that you've been on the show. If there's a flare-up of COVID-19 in a particular election site, okay, just turns out that somebody was sick, or maybe a election official turns out that they were sick and didn't even realize it. What happens? It sounds like you're trying to take as many safeguards as you can with everybody in the facility and not touching anything.
Right.
To make sure that everybody comes through and vote and leaves safely, even if, you know, again, a pandemic with a virus that's flying around that nobody can see. Do you feel as comfortable as you can be that even if that occurred, you know, you've taken all the safeguards you can to make sure that everybody's okay? Or is there a backup plan in case there's, you know, do people have to be notified or anything else like that?
There's a backup plan. I've got Dr. Wright's personal cell phone number. We've talked about it a little bit about what the process will be. Dr. Wright even came out and looked over the early voting site at Howard, just to get a feel for how the setup was, what the process was going to be, so that he could feel good. We've taken all the precautions that we could take for the voter and the poll officials. But should something like that happen, we're ready. We have all the communication lines open to let folks know. But we would essentially turn it over to the Metro Health Department at that point to do their thing.
And Dr. Wright is with Metro Health?
Yes. He's kind of their point person under Dr. Shahanger.
Okay. All right. So, well, it is almost 11 o'clock. This has been really, really interesting. Let me first say thank you for being on the show. I know you got other things to do. Second of all, let me thank you and your staff. I've worked with your staff for many years. They do an exceptional job. They are very easy to deal with, very friendly when you come in. And I know that we're all under different types of stress. I know you all are getting ready to go through something, and you're going through it right now, something that we've never had to deal with before. So thank you. Just hang in there and try to get some rest before the 6th, because I don't know if you're going to get any rest that night. And then let me ask you one other thing, and then I'll make the announcement to everybody else. So we have a council meeting this Tuesday night. That's not a plug for us. It's just we do it anyway. But if there's information that you want me to get out, that I can just tell everybody openly that gets out on at the beginning of the council meeting, I'm happy to do that. Okay. So I've got plenty of notes. I may send you something, but if you want to send me something to,
that'll be great.
Kind of tell people, I'm happy to do it, so people do know that all the polling places are open 7 to 7. Safeguards are in place, all that stuff, so I can make sure that everybody does that. Let me check. It looks like I'm getting a couple more messages right at the last minute. I'm supposed to the specific email address for requesting absentee ballot. So any of that stuff that you tell council the specific email address for requesting absentee ballot. So any of that information, and then I can particularly talk about the request for August the 5th and say that, have to wait until results come in for the 6th election before you start getting an absentee ballot.
While you're watching the results come in, you can fill out your absentee request.
Okay. So anyway, thank you for all your work. We will get the correct message out on the 4th. I will tell you on the 4th, we will be passing a resolution brought by the Women's Caucus to recognize the 100th anniversary of the passage of getting the right to vote for women, which is a big deal, and they're going to be ringing the bells at the council meeting. We'll try not to hurt everybody's eardrums. I think we're trying to deal with that from our WebEx stuff. And I will tell everybody that next week, we got confirmed yesterday that this Zoom call, I will be interviewing the mayor of Nashville, John Cooper. So everybody stay tuned. This will give me a chance to ask the mayor every question that I always wanted to ask and more, including your questions. So the mayor has confirmed for next Saturday, sending in those questions. And I know he wants to talk about the budget, but we'll have just hopefully gotten the election results by then, by next Saturday morning. And we can ask him all kinds of different questions. Talking about stress, I know we all have it. He's got some too. So anyway, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening on, Jeff. Take care. If we can be helpful this week, let us know. Okay, good luck. And everybody have a good rest of the weekend. Everybody be safe. Thanks, everybody.